What's up, Alive Church? We are here for another exciting week in our series, Foolproofing Your Life, and we are trying to make all of us less foolish, more wise. Today we're talking about the words we use, and I'm excited about what we're going to discover that God has in His Word about the words we use and the power they hold. So let's jump in. Let there be light. God spoke those words, and then light entered the scene. Like God spoke the planets into existence. He spoke animals into existence, as well as He spoke the trees and the grass and flowers and bushes into existence. God spoke kale into existence, my friend. I mean, personally, I'm grateful for that. But maybe that's not the world that you would have created if you had the choice. But either way, the world we know it began by the very words of God. And our worlds around us have been formed pretty dramatically at times by words by other people even too, haven't they? I mean, just think of some of the ways that words have formed and shaped and transformed and molded our worlds. Words like, will you go to the dance with me? Do you think we'll get caught? It's not you, it's me. We need to talk. I do. It's just not working out for you here anymore. I'm sorry, but your test results came back positive. You have. At times, it was in a moment, and our world was changed by words. Like the difference of a fresh layer of snow in the winter that covers everything. The world just suddenly has changed, just immediately. It was dramatic, and life would never be the same again. But then what's wild is that those people may not have always even realized they were going to leave such a lasting impact when they said those words to us. They were maybe just going to, say something, and they didn't realize they were going to play such a pivotal role in forming your world, that those words that they said would stay with you. It makes me wonder what words you've said that people remember. Have you ever thought of that? Like, who is remembering the thing that you said to them even years and decades later? The words you've spoken that changed people's worlds for the better or for the worse. And the way your words may have breathed life into someone or sucked it out of them. You may be sitting here thinking, I'm not too sure that my words have or even could do anything so dramatic. I just don't think so. And I know it sounds overstated, but your words have affected people, even affected you. It's changed the way people see themselves, how they see you. Your words have changed the way people see others, see life in their situations, maybe even how they see God. It's interesting when you think about it, how God created the world through His words and then gave us the power to shape it so dramatically through our words. So let me ask you to consider this today. What kind of world do you want to live in? What kind of world do you want to live in? Really, a world that honors God? A world that is peaceful? One that's productive? That's healthy and whole? Do you want to live in a world that's respectful, reliable, smart and strategic, wise, In Solomon's treasure chest of wisdom that we're looking into in Proverbs, there are a lot of proverbs about our words. Probably one of the topics, in fact, that I would say he talked about the most in his book is words. He just keeps on bringing it up. Solomon recognized the world-changing power of our words. Just look at this one in Proverbs 10, 31 and 32, when he says, the mouth of the righteous brings forth wisdom, which is something we really are valuing in this series, but the perverse tongue will be cut off. The lips of the righteous know what is acceptable, and the mouth of the wicked what is perverse. What is acceptable? That's what we want to learn today. What are the words that are acceptable? But the difference in words that he says here is the difference between wisdom and being cut off. But notice that he said the lips of the righteous, they know what's acceptable, and the wicked what's not acceptable. If we're going to be foolproofing our life, if we're going to be wise, we should have a good idea of what is acceptable when it comes to communication and what's not when it comes to our speech. because there are consequences. Proverbs 14:3. By the mouth of a fool comes a rod for his back, but the lips of the wise will preserve them. We'll talk more about that later, but for now I want to just share with you what I see as kind of our main verse today, and we're going to really dive in here now. 13:2 says, "From the fruit of his mouth a man eats what is good, but the desire of the treacherous is for violence." Now, I'm mostly concentrating on that first part because it's fascinating to me. There's an interesting play on metaphors here that I want to make sure you catch and you notice this. You get to eat what is good. That's right what he says. Like at the end of that first part, you get to eat what is good, like a nice filet mignon rather than like a White Castle burger. Or like snacking on gummy worms, like good gummy worms rather than good and plenties, because whoever would want to eat those? You get to consume with your mouth the produce of your mouth. You get to consume the kind of world you create. He's mixing metaphors here, but you could essentially say it this way, and this is our main thing for today, and I want to make sure you get this. Your words are forming your world. Your words are forming your world, forming the world of your work life. They're forming the world of your home life, your school life, forming the world of your relationships, your spiritual development, yeah, and your ability to handle and navigate the challenges that life throws at you. So what kind of world do you want to live in? Like I said, God offers a lot of wisdom in Proverbs about how we can be foolproof and how we can foolproof our lives and create a better world by how we communicate. So I want to talk through 5 major things we need to learn in order to be wiser, in order to foolproof our lives, in order to have our words form a better world for us to enjoy and others around us to enjoy too. So here we go. Number 1, learn to be slower to speak. Now, I personally love talking. Always have. In fact, I was never the quiet kid growing up, never the kid who had to be coaxed into talking more. In fact, I got spanked, in case you didn't know this fun story from my childhood I've shared before, but I got spanked in kindergarten at school. Like I went to a Christian school and they still did that, and I got spanked for talking too much. I got 5 checks on the board sent to the principal's office, and a whooping was mine because I just wouldn't shut up. Now I get paid to talk. I mean, I do other things as a pastor, but I mean, it worked out. But there's a principle in life in general that we should learn to appreciate when it comes to words specifically as well. And here it is. An overabundance of a resource causes it to lose value. If it's just everywhere, it doesn't matter as much. It's not as valuable. The more rare of a diamond or a baseball card or like the collector's edition, director's uncut, signed DVD or something like that, the more rare it is, the more valuable it is. The more common it is, the less valuable it is. So I've tried learning as I've grown up to be more and more silent when possible. Let my words carry a bit more weight. Observe, listen, ask questions, let them talk, and learn. Because not only does it make what I have to say when I say it more valuable, but it also can save me, quite frankly, a lot of trouble, a lot of heartache, and a lot of regret from saying things that I shouldn't say, or saying them in a moment I shouldn't say them in. Let's look at a couple Proverbs here, since that's what we're doing today. Proverbs 10:14. The wise lay up knowledge. They collect knowledge, but the mouth of a fool brings ruin near. 21:23. Whoever keeps his mouth and his tongue keeps himself out of trouble. Proverbs 13:3. Whoever guards his mouth preserves his life. He who opens wide his lips comes to ruin. And then the classic one, Proverbs 10:19. When words are many, transgression is not lacking. I remember reading it in a different translation that would say, when words are many, sin is not absent. But either way, but whoever restrains his lips is prudent. So it's wise to guard or keep watch over your mouth rather than opening it wide. Better to speak less often and be wise in that. An old quote that they're not sure really who originally said it. Maybe you've heard it before. It's so funny. It says, better to remain silent and be thought of a fool than to speak and to remove all doubt. But really, it is godly wisdom to try to speak less so that your speech grows in value. Because Proverbs 17:28 says, even a fool who keeps silent is considered wise. When he closes his lips, he is deemed intelligent. I mean, the Bible's even saying that. Like, you'll gain wisdom just by, in other people's perspective, just by not speaking up as much. So what if you tried to just speak a little less this week. Each of us, if we each tried to speak a little less this week so that you could intentionally, as the scriptures just said, lay up knowledge by listening, by observing, by taking it in. But then again, slow to speak doesn't just mean saying less, does it? Like, it also means slowing down your communication style. Because Proverbs 29:20 says this poignant proverb. It says, "Do you see a man who is hasty in his words? There is more hope for a fool than for him." Hastiness is that rush to say something. It's not just a matter of are you a talkative person, it's the feeling like you have to rush to respond. Proverbs 15:28 says, "The heart of the righteous instead ponders how to answer, but the mouth of the wicked pours out evil things." Hastiness, hear me out here, hastiness and intentionality are opposed to each other. It's incredibly rare to do something hastily and also do it well. And the person who speaks hastily, just says what they're thinking, just kind of always just say what I'm thinking. Well, the person who speaks hastily is like the doctor who rushes to do open heart surgery. I mean, you may end up being okay, but if you rush it, you're way more likely to hurt someone. You could kill them and you could damage your career. And you may not be, you or I may not be a heart surgeon, but your words are affecting your heart and the hearts of others. So this means that there are going to be times you'll want to rush in and speak, and you should instead be silent. You should make sure to let them talk and don't interrupt them. Listen and think before you speak. And you're going to be so tempted, I know it because I've been there, you're going to be so tempted to say what's on your mind, but instead let it sit on your mind for just a second or two and ask God if it is important to say, or if it's important to say right then, or if it's important to say right then and that way. Let God maybe do a little bit of editing of what you were going to say. There's wisdom in that. So obviously you know when it's going to be most hard to do this, right? Like, when is this going to be the most challenging? It's when the tensions are high and the emotions are intense and everything inside of you just wants to burst forth. That's when you want to give them a piece of your mind. You want to tell them off. You want to write them the email. You want to add that snark into what you're about to say. You want to snap at your spouse, or you want to blow up at that person, or maybe just passively aggressive, take a stab at that person. Proverbs 12:16 says, "The vexation of a fool is known at once." They can't hold back. No self-control, like we talked about last week. But the prudent ignores an insult. And speaking of taking a stab, like I just talked about a second ago, at people, Proverbs 12:18, just 2 verses later, says, "There is one whose rash words," rash and careless, "are like sword thrusts, but the tongue of the wise brings healing." Your tongue can bring healing. More on that later, by the way. But it can also, like a sword, it can cut and it can kill. Some of us need to realize that too often our normal speech pattern involves accusing, belittling, manipulating, mocking, insulting, or condemning people. And it's so important that you and I, because of that, we learn how to be slow to speak. There's so much wisdom in that, so much life in that simple thing, just right there, being slow to speak. And it's just one of the ways that our words form our world. So let's go on to the next one. The second one is, I would say, we need to learn the power of speaking kindly. I think kindness is generally underrated in our world. It's made out to be so soft and cuddly, which keeps many of us people who pride ourselves in maybe being tough, being less interested in being kind. And that's a shame, because it can even seem like weakness at times to be kind. But speaking kindly, specifically, takes incredible strength. That part of kindness, speaking kindly, incredible strength. It's incredibly powerful, and it is godly. Proverbs 11:12, "Whoever belittles his neighbor lacks sense, but a man of understanding remains silent." Now, biblically, our neighbor isn't just, so you know, the person who shares in a wall in your apartment, or the person on the other side of the picket fence in your neighborhood. It's the people you generally encounter in your day-to-day life. So it could say whoever belittles their family members, their coworkers, their classmates, their teachers, their preachers, their baristas, and yes, even your next-door neighbors, lacks sense. It's so easy to be critical of the people in our world, isn't it? Because they're imperfect, They do things wrong, or maybe just differently than we would, and we see it as wrong. So we use our words to talk down about them and the way that they are. Just a quick comment here or there, or we just get on this rant, or something like that. Can you think of a time recently when you were speaking critically of something or someone? Sometimes it'll be words that that person themselves hear. You say it right to them, but oftentimes those unkind words are being said to someone else about that person. But either way, it's not the wise way. Check this out. Proverbs 16:24 says, "Gracious words are like a honeycomb, sweetness to the soul and health to the body." It's kind of like our American proverb that says you catch more flies with honey than vinegar. See, speaking sweetly almost sounds like excessively and exclusively feminine. Speaking sweetly. But it actually transcends gender stereotypes and gets to the level of just being a wise person. The wise person, whether they're a man or a woman, realizes the value of sweet, kind, gentle words. Mother Teresa once said that kind words can be short and easy to speak, but their echoes are truly endless. And I can agree with that, because I can think back on kind words that were said to me so many years ago. I mean, can't you think of some words that people said to you that you remember that were talking about your value or the goodness of who you were or the joy that others found in you? And most of the time, they probably forgot they'd even said it. Soon after they said it, after it left their mouths, they forgot they said it. But it's been sitting in your heart for months, years, maybe decades now. And it's left a lasting impact. But yet again, let's acknowledge the hard reality of this wisdom. The hardest time to do this wise thing of speaking kindly is when the tensions are high. And maybe they, whoever they is, aren't speaking kindly or respectfully to you. That's when you want to, answer back with some fire. Let them really have it. Let them just go ahead and just hear what you got to say. But let me just drop this proverb on us. Proverbs 15:1 says, "A soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger." Whether you're the one starting it or you're just the one getting the option to continue it, recognize the value in fighting to be kind. It might feel unnatural for you, for your personality. You might say it's just not natural, especially if you've been used to being a bit sharp and edgy with your words. I understand some of you. I know some of my dear friends, they'd say, "Yep, that's me." But if there's a way, let me just ask you this. If there's a way that's natural for you, but unwise, does God want you to choose that way over a way that maybe might be a bit more unnatural, but is actually wise? On to the third thing. We need to learn to have our words form the world the right way. And this is it. Learn the power of speaking wisely. We just talked about the power of speaking kindly. I want to speak now about speaking wisely. Because sometimes the difference between wisdom and foolishness is more than the specific words, but also the context, the tone, the setup, and so much more that's going on. Speaking wisely starts, by the way, with actually knowing what you're talking about. Proverbs 20:15 says, "There is gold and abundance of costly stones, but the lips of knowledge are a precious jewel." So one of the richest possessions you could have is not a big blingy ring. It's a mouth that speaks with knowledge, is what it's saying. So I just want to gently, lovingly, and kindly, yes, because I just talked about it, I want to kindly plead with some of you to give yourself a pass on some conversations. You don't always have to jump in, being slow to speak. You can take a pass on talking about something or jumping into a conversation. We sometimes feel a need to speak into a situation when we really should be listening in because we don't, frankly, and again, I'm not trying to be mean, but we don't know what we're talking about. Don't feel the need to talk if you don't know what you're talking about. Let silence sit if it needs to, or let someone else speak. Proverbs 15:2 says, "The tongue of the wise commends knowledge, but the mouth of fools pour out folly." If you have knowledge legitimately, then speak up, sure. But realize that pride, the topic from 3 weeks ago, can definitely show up here. Like I said, it'll show up in all these different places. It could show up here big time when we think we know a lot more than we actually do about a topic. So don't pour out folly out of your mouth, and be humble enough and wise enough to acknowledge that you're listening because you want to learn. Because there's a lot I don't know about this and I want to learn. So I'm going to just ask questions. I'm going to listen. Another way of speaking wisely. is seen in these two proverbs here. Proverbs 16:23 says, "The heart of the wise makes his speech judicious and adds persuasiveness to his lips." I love those words. But Proverbs 16:21 says, "The wise of heart is called discerning, and sweetness of speech increases persuasiveness." It kind of ties into speaking kindly, but it's more than just being kind. Just so I want to make sure we understand that. It's really being judicious and discerning, meaning that you learn the value of really smart, intelligent communication. Like, what is the best way to communicate? You learn how to communicate more clearly, concisely, saying what you mean, saying it in a way that people understand and can go with, and they get it. Doing a better job of actually getting people to understand what you're saying and what you're not saying. That you learn how to connect with people through words. Because if you can't get them to care about what you're saying because you just didn't communicate well, then why even say it, right? Like, there's so much really that is entailed in this. And as a communicator professionally, I've really wanted to lean into this over the last decade or two to really learn how to communicate well. But here's my recommendation to you. Find a couple wise followers of Jesus who you see are just really endearing and convincing in their words. Like, you understand what they're saying, and they're compelling in the words they say. They speak in a way that brings you in closer to them and their ideas rather than repelling you. Then lean in and study them. Talk with them about how they talk. Ask them to teach you. Learn. Get that counsel around you like we talked about recently. There are so many important things that you'll want to communicate during the course of your life, aren't there? So many things you're going to want to communicate. Wouldn't you want to learn how to do that better, more wisely? Last thing I want to say about this speaking wisely thing is that it's not all about saying the right thing. I know I kind of already said that, but sometimes it's about when and how you say it too. You know, the people, well, it's the truth, is the common catchphrase of the person who isn't wise enough to know how truth should be delivered. It's like throwing the box of mac and cheese on the plate and wondering why the person isn't thanking you for dinner. I mean, there's all the raw ingredients. There you go. It's got to be prepared and be prepared right. You know, it's not just to throw it there. That's why Proverbs 15:23 says, "To make an apt answer is a joy to a man." Apt, appropriate answer. And a word in season, how good it is. You hear that? You're creating a good world with your words when you know how to give an apt answer to people. It's a joy. All right, fourth thing, let's take a little negative approach here if we can, the danger of destructive words. Learn the danger of destructive words. Now, earlier I was saying about remembering, and how we all can probably, kind words that people have said to us that have echoed into our lives today. We probably have a certain number of those, right? But don't you also have some words, each of us? Painful things that were said to you, hurtful things that people said about you that are embedded into your memory as well. Just like the memory making kind words, sometimes that person saying it had no idea what they were saying, no idea how it would affect you, no idea how it would leave an impression on your world and make your world the way it is now, but they did. And there are so many ways that our tongues can be destructive if we're not careful to make sure that we don't let them be. Proverbs 16:28 says, "A dishonest man spreads strife, and a whisperer separates close friends." So here we see the danger of dishonesty and gossiping. So let's keep up with seeing the danger of gossip in friendship. Just real quickly, Proverbs 25:11 says, "The north wind brings forth rain," and where they lived, that's what would happen. So you see the north wind, and you know rain's coming, and a backbiting tongue, a person who talks bad about their friends behind them, gives angry looks. You know they're coming. But God doesn't just dislike gossip, even if the person isn't your friend, because Proverbs 11:13 says, "Whoever goes about slandering reveals secrets, but he who is trustworthy in spirit keeps a thing covered." Now, I'm not saying that we are told by God to never speak up, about evil or wrongdoing. That's absolutely not what we see in Scripture. But what it's talking about is the unproductive talking that a lot of us are way too comfortable doing, especially if we call ourselves Christians. And that's gossiping. Talking about someone instead of talking to that someone. Personally, I gotta admit, just if I can get personal really quickly here, that this is so hard for me to preach right now, because honestly, within the last 2 weeks, I've had the opportunity to hear about a lot of talking about me that hasn't happened to me. Listen, I know I've done this before. Personally, I've done this too. So I'm not sitting here thinking that I'm better than other people and they're awful people and how could they do this and all kind of stuff. But I am saying that I'm wearing the weight of the pain that comes with this. When you know that other people are talking about you but not willing to be proactive in talking to you, it makes me want to beg people just to pick up their phone, schedule the coffee, let's talk. See, a whisper, it says, a whisper separates close friends. It damages relationships when we are more comfortable talking about than talking to. I mean, what kinds of seeds are you planting? Think about it when you do that. Think of it that way. If you know me, you know I love gardening. So what kind of seeds are you planting when you do that? Are you planting peace by talking in circles about your gripes and grievances about that person who's outside the circle? Or are you sowing discord? Because Proverbs 6:12-15, it's a stretch here, but let's read these verses together. It says, a worthless person, a wicked man, goes about with crooked speech, winks with his eyes, signals with his feet, points with his finger. It's talking about, in that culture, ways that you communicate crookedly. With perverted heart, devises evil, continually sowing discord. Therefore, calamity will come upon him. Suddenly, in a moment, he will be broken beyond healing. So for one, I want you to realize that this pain caused by our destructive words doesn't just hurt others, it's hurting us too. I mean, just look at Proverbs 12:13 that says, an evil man is ensnared by the transgression of his lips, but the righteous escapes trouble. Trapped by your tongue if you don't use it wisely, and freed by it if you do. That's what it says. But as Proverbs 6 was talking about earlier, it said the worthless and wicked person is going around all over with the crooked, destructive speech. It made me think of a picture. Since again, I like paying attention to plants and all that. And if you have ever seen bamboo, it is not native to our area. And so because of that especially, bamboo is kind of like what I picture when I hear this proverb. A person going around and sowing things and it going everywhere. If a neighbor of yours ever plants bamboo in their yard, just give it some time. It will be in your yard and it will take over. That's just the nature of bamboo. It grows like crazy, it's fast, it's invasive, and it just won't let up, and it's so hard to get rid of. That's the way this kind of stuff is, this crooked speech. It invades not only the person's life and ruins it, but it goes around all around. Crooked speech, destructive talk, whether it's the words that you're using or the way it's being said or whatever is making it unbeneficial, is something that not only should you not do, it seems like the scripture says, but I think it goes beyond that. Look at Proverbs 4:24. It says, put away from you crooked speech and put devious talk far from you. I think this seems to be talking about not only not doing it yourself, but distancing yourself from wherever it's happening. This kind of ups the ante a bit, doesn't it? When you think about it, like, wow, that just raised the bar. It honestly is tough for a bunch of people to not gossip. I mean, let's be honest, it is. Or to talk improperly in whatever way that may mean. But it's even tougher to do or to say something about it when it's happening in front of you. Like, hey, hold on a second. I'm sorry, I know you want to vent to me, you want to like just process it with, you should talk to that person that you're talking about first. It may be one of the hardest things for the average person to say that. And that's kind of a shame, really, when we think about how hard, or for maybe some of us impossible, we would find it to say, hey, well, hold on, I need to know that you're going to talk to that person and not just talk about them. Because the reason it's such a shame that we wouldn't do that is, wouldn't you want that person, if they had a grievance against you, to talk to you about it? If you don't know what it is, if you don't know, or maybe you don't know the fullest extent, or maybe there's some lack of clarity or whatever, wouldn't you want them to talk to you and say to you? And some of y'all need to look at the talking that's happening around you and decide, is this crooked or not? And if it is crooked, what are you going to do about that? See, we've got to learn how to, in this destructive talk stuff, we've got to learn how to differ with people and see things differently without demonizing them and trying to destroy them. How to graciously confront people that we have an issue with, eyeball to eyeball, rather than via snippy text to them or emails, or even worse, talking about them to someone else. We've got to learn to maybe create some ground rules for how we'll talk. Whether it's words that we won't say, like I'm not going to use these kinds of words, or just general rules for healthy conversations, like in an argument, avoiding using hyperbole. Like, you always do this. You never do this. I'm not going to do that. We're going to no hyperbole in our arguments so that we don't risk doing destruction with our mouths. Because there is power in the tongue, destructive or constructive. Like a fire can warm your house or burn your house depending on how you use it. I want to remind you one more time, our main thing today, your words are forming your world. So let's go back to this one from earlier because it's such an important verse in our time today. Proverbs 12:18. There is one whose rash words are like sword thrusts. That's what I'm talking about, this destructive words and all that. I want us to learn the power of that. But the tongue of the wise brings healing. So I want us to lastly here, the fifth thing, is I want us to learn the restorative power of words. The tongue of the wise brings healing. What if you were known for having words that healed people? Restored them to what God designed and desired for them to be. Your words help them get there. Now, just so we're clear, this doesn't mean going around and only ever saying nice things to people. Oh, you're so good at that. You're amazing. I love you. Aren't you the sweetest thing ever? Like, it's not flowery talk all the time, telling people how amazing they are. True restoration is actually grittier than that. Like a doctor sometimes has to re-break a bone so that it can heal correctly. Sometimes restoration is going to be a little bit painful. But ultimately, and very clearly, it's about loving that person well, giving them life through your words. I mean, just look at some of these amazing proverbs here as I fire a couple at us. Proverbs 10:11 says, "The mouth of the righteous is a fountain of life, but the mouth of the wicked conceals violence." So, fountain of life. They can drink from it like it's the very water of life that they need. Proverbs 15:4 says, "A gentle tongue is a tree of life, but perverseness in it breaks the spirit." A tree of life, like they can eat from it and find life. We're talking about having life-giving communication with people. The question we're asking here is, are people leaving a conversation with me with more life, more Jesus than when they came? Am I leaving people with that impression? Earlier, we talked about how we consume the fruit of our own mouths, right? Remember that? Like the words, we consume our own fruit. But so do those who hear our words. It's not just us. So the question I want to ask is, what are we feeding them? What are we giving them? The options may be poison, junk food, porridge, which is like food. It's okay, it's not junk food, but it's not really tasty. Or healthy and scrumptious food. Now, your words are meant to breathe life into others. So I want to keep on reminding you that Proverbs shouts out loudly that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, right? So if you want to be truly wise, start with a deep respect and reverence for God. And that connects with each of the 7 things we're talking about in these 7 weeks of this series. Today, I want to use that to go ahead and show you that the wise person realizes that God has given most of us the full functioning use of a mouth, ears, hands, and eyes as a gift. We are blessed to be able to communicate with others through each of those. Now, are we using the gift that God gave us to actually sow death by criticism, by harshness, by unkindness, or just poor timing and generally unwise talking? Are we using the gift God gave us to maybe not sow death, but just aimlessly say words that maybe lack knowledge, or we just aren't listening like we should be? We're just kind of plodding our way through creating a world with our words, and it reflects that kind of unintentionality. Or are we using the gift that God has given us to communicate, to spread life, truth, goodness, encouragement, restoration, and peace? See, God spoke this world into existence and then used words to invite us into being part of building His kingdom here on this earth amidst all of its brokenness that it currently has, right? So may we learn to be incredibly intentional about using the power of our words for forming the kind of world that Jesus also ultimately wants to see.